Okay. Conor, thank you. Morning to you. 20 to 10. I want to move on. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine has led to calls for the boycott of goods which have links to Israel. The Respect Party MP, George Galloway, has urged shoppers to stop buying beauty products after photos emerged of care packs being sent to female Israeli soldiers. Earlier this week, a group of pro-Palestinian demonstrators removed products from the shelves of a supermarket in West Belfast, with many holding aloft banners and flags shouting Free Palestine. George Galloway is with us now. George, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning. And the TV MLA, Jim Allister. Good morning to you, Jim.
Good morning.
Good morning. George, first of all, you said Bradford should be an Israeli-free zone. Why?
Well, we think that the 95% of Israelis who cheered on the massacres that the rest of us in the world were watching are unwelcome. It's a symbolic gesture, like declaring yourself a nuclear-free zone. Of course, you can't stop radiation, and I can't and don't have the power to stop any Israeli coming to Bradford.
And where's that 95% figure come from, George?
From the opinion polls in the most respected daily, Haaretz, in Israel, and consistently, week after week, throughout the massacre. 4% of the Israeli public opposed the massacres, and they'd be given a hero's welcome, I assure you, in Bradford. But the boycott campaign to which you referred is a worldwide movement and is gathering pace as we speak. These boycotting of goods and services, and the University Teaching Union in Britain, a very prestigious organisation, has already banned contact with Israeli academics.
Jim, you would oppose a boycott of Israel?
Well, I think any individual has the right, from their own singular point of view, to decide what they'll buy and what they won't buy, and each can implement their own boycott according to their own views. What I strongly object to is an enforced boycott, so that others who wish to buy Israeli goods are denied that opportunity. It seems rather lopsided and high-handed to simply say, well, because we disagree with Israel, we will deny anyone and everyone the opportunity to trade with Israel. One thing for them to do it personally for themselves, if they think that's the right thing to do. Another thing to force it upon everyone else, and that's where it's absolutely wrong.
But you support Israel, Jim, don't you?
I support Israel's right to defend itself, and what we have seen...
What about how many children they've killed?
Well, sorry, what we have seen for years is a concerted, determined effort to perfect continual rocket attacks upon Israel, which have also killed children, and a nation state cannot allow its people forever to be peppered in that way by deadly rockets, and has the right and has taken the necessary steps to try and bring that to an end. Now, war is never pleasant. It is.
Well, that's a euphemism, isn't it? War is never pleasant. Look at the amount of women and children that have been killed by Israeli rockets. And it's a euphemism, surely, to say war is never pleasant. It's nothing to do with being unpleasant. It's to do with dead bodies.
Yes, but women and children have been killed by Hamas rockets. Women and children have been killed by the Israeli response. But let's be clear, if there were no Hamas rockets, there would have been no Israeli offensive into Gaza. That's where people lose the run of themselves in terms of not realizing where this thing starts. If Hamas would recognize the right of Israel to exist and live accordingly, then there wouldn't be that response.
Let's let George Galloway speak to you. You can both speak to each other. You don't need me in the middle.
First of all, I agree with the first part of what Jim said, so we can park that issue. I'm not in favour of forcing anybody to do anything. We are saying that people should exercise their conscience in what they themselves buy, and the organisations and so on of which they're part should make collective decisions about that. So we agree on that, and I never thought I'd say that. But the most telling phrase in Jim's contribution there was not recognising where things start. That's the whole point. Palestine has been wiped off the map. Its people scattered to the four corners of the earth. and millions of them living in a concentration camp in Gaza with no way in and no way out. And if Israel has the right to defend itself, the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves. And there have been no women and children killed on the Israeli side over the last 4 weeks. Hold on, Jim. None at all. There are 3 civilians killed, all of them men, but there have been 2,000 people killed in Gaza with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And the UN says that 85% of those were civilians, and most of those were women and children. So Jim is factually incorrect on that.
Of course, George, you've been wholly selective, and you were careful to say no women and children killed in the last 4 weeks. What about the last 4 years of the use of rockets? How many women and children? And you see, you talk about this.
I think you're also wrong.
Let's let Jim finish, George, then you come back.
You talk about this idea of wiping Palestine off the face of the earth. That is not the ambition of the Israeli government, but that most certainly is the ambition of Hamas. And I wonder, and I ask you, are you in favour of wiping Israel as a country off the face of the earth? Because certainly all your utterances would suggest that you may well be in line with a lot of the very extreme Islamic people who take that view.
Well, George Galloway, do you support Israel's right to exist?
I support, and have all of my life, and have said so 10,000 times, a binational state called Israel-Palestine, or Palestine-Israel.
You do not support Israel's right to exist?
One man, one woman, one vote. That's what I support.
Israel's right to exist?
I support the right of Israel-Palestine to exist.
Not
it's thoroughly reasonable.
As we know it.
Jim,
not Israel as we know it. Not a home for the Jewish people.
I think we need to let George finish his sentence, Jim.
Jim, it's a thoroughly reasonable position if you'll ponder it. You were probably not expecting it, but it is my view, and I came to it almost 40 years ago. In any case, the whole point is that Jim and I have the right to disagree and to argue and canvass our points of view. And these foolish councillors in Belfast who are seeking to break a commercial contract with me on Saturday the 23rd are making a grave mistake, not just in the interests of the Belfast taxpayer, but in the interests of free debate. Let's have this debate in Belfast. I'm ready. If Jim is ready, he should come along and he'll be allowed to have his say.
The DUP has said it has written a letter, George, to Belfast City Council expressing its concern at the event that you've just mentioned there. You're coming to Belfast later this month.
Yeah.
And this is Councillor Kingston, Councillor Brian Kingston. He says he wants the Belfast event to be reviewed. He said DUP councillors are also seeking advice from the police on the potential for incitement to hatred in relation to what you have said. Now, this is referring to something that you said in Leeds. Let's just hear some of what you did say.
We have declared Bradford an Israel-free zone. We don't want any Israeli goods. We don't want any Israeli services. We don't want any Israeli academics coming to the university or the college. We don't even want any Israeli tourists to come to Bradford, even if any of them had thought of doing so. We reject this illegal, barbarous, savage state that calls itself Israel.
Well, you believe in democracy, George. So therefore you don't want any Israeli academics or tourists coming to Bradford? You want to completely eradicate those people, stop them coming into the country, do you?
Eradicate, certainly not a word that I would ever...
Eradicate in terms of stopping them coming to Bradford at all?
Well, I can't stop them coming. Indeed, since I made that speech, quite a few have come and waved Israeli flags and danced on the graves of the people in Gaza. But as I think I mentioned...
I think you're right, by the way. Eradicate is wrong, so my apologies for that. I think you're right.
I think I mentioned to you earlier, the University Teachers Union, the AUT, or the ACU as it's now known, has had for years a policy of boycotting Israeli academics because we don't want normalization with an abnormal state that occupies Palestinian land, keeps millions of people in a concentration camp. We don't want connections like that. And that's my view. It's a symbolic gesture. I can't stop them coming. But I want to say that most people in Bradford will not welcome them if they come. It's really simple.
Well, I want to say this. I think in that snippet, we heard the real George Galloway, insofar as he plainly does not recognise Israel, and the language he used about it was quite clear. This is the same Mr. Galloway who wishes, and it's a free country and therefore he's entitled to, who wishes to come to Northern Ireland, but wishes to stop tourists from Israel going to his constituency. You know, it's time that Mr. Galloway practiced what he preaches. He preaches that he should come to Belfast. He should proclaim and pontificate his outrageous views and anti-Israel views on all of this. But well, dare anyone from Israel step within the boundaries of his constituency in Bedford? You know, is this man for real? How can he expect to be taken seriously if that's his attitude?
Jim, the last time I looked, Belfast was part of the United Kingdom, and the last time I listened, I understood that you wanted it to remain so. As such, I don't need your invitation or permission to come to Belfast, and I'm coming.
You do?
I'm coming.
You don't?
I'm coming.
You can come freely.
I'm British. I'm British, and I have.
Hold on, Jim. Hold on. Let's let George Galloway finish, then you can come back.
I'm British. I have the right to be in Belfast.
Yes.
And I'll be there, and I'll make my case. It's a case, moreover, which is supported by millions of people in this country and a large number of people in Belfast. And the tickets are going like hotcakes. And thanks very much to the DUP. It'll be a sellout probably before the end of this week.
And so,
never mind.
And so, therefore, Jim Allister, just so that I'm clear in this, do you defend George Galloway's right to come to Belfast and to set out his position, or are you supporting the DUP's position on this, that the council should stop him being able to do this event at the Ulster Hall?
I was pointing out the irony.
Yes, but which?
Yes, but just let me deal with it. I was pointing out the irony and the contradiction of George Galloway asserting his right, and he has a right to come to any part of the United Kingdom to speak, provided he does it within the law. His right to come to Belfast, but his denial of the right of anyone from Israel to step within his constituency. Look, Mr. Galloway's coming, the super socialist Galloway is coming to Belfast to make money. This is a commercial enterprise, and super socialist George Galloway is coming to pocket a large fee for his appearance. Sadly, this controversy, of course, will probably enlarge that fee even further.
You'll want to respond to that, George.
Thank you very much, Jim. You're right. A man who speaks logic from his community. This controversy will pack the hall, the show they tried to ban. And the books that I'm launching in Belfast will probably sell like hotcakes too, because there is a public appetite for and a market for the kind of views that I'm expressing.
Well, the DP haven't called for it to be banned, George. They've called for it to be reviewed.
Well, I think that's a euphemism, to use your word earlier. But the reality is that the Ulster Hall...
But George, why not afford...
Let's let him finish, Jim. Let's let him finish.
One last point, mate. The Ulster Hall has been the site of many an incendiary speech by people from the loyalist community. My old friend, the Reverend Ian Paisley's, raised the roof there many a time with rallies, and it's a bit much being lectured to by the followers of Pastor McConnell and his Sharara law that a British Member of Parliament should not be allowed to speak there.
Why, George, not afford the same civility that you demand for yourself in coming to speak to Belfast to an Israeli academic or anyone from Israel to come to Bradford? Why is it that it's okay for you to go where you wish, to make money out of it as part of a commercial enterprise, but well dare anyone from Israel, that state that you wish to see wiped off the face of the earth, step into Bradford? There's the contradiction, and there's the real George Galloway.
There's no contradiction. Israel is a foreign country. I myself am not allowed to go there. So foreign countries make their own decisions about who can come to their country. And Belfast, for the moment at least, is in my country, and I'm going.
Yes, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm simply pointing out why you're coming. I'm simply saying why you're coming. coming and why you're enjoying this controversy so much, because it will fatten the check that you will get for coming. I'm pointing that out to you as a super socialist who's living off the back of this sort of thing and enjoying the doing of it. But
I think what you mean is that people want to pay and buy tickets to hear me. I think that's what you mean.
You are consumed with an irrational hatred of Israel, and since Israel is the home of the Jewish people, it follows in respects of the Jews to the very point where you would drive them out of Bradford and anywhere else where you had control.
Well, you would deny George Galloway being anti-Semitic, wouldn't you?
Well, I wouldn't even entertain such an absurd charge. I have a judgment in Court 13 in front of Justice Eadie in the High Court in London, which says the opposite of that. And anyone who suggests that the Honourable Judge was a PLO man in disguise would be making a fool of themselves. I support a binational state of Israel-Palestine. Ponder it.
Do you support the firing of rockets into Israel?
Palestinians have the same right to defend themselves that you assert.
No, that is not defending yourself. That is aggressive, gratuitous action. That is not defense. That is aggression. And you support the firing of rockets into Israel. Now, it does not say all we need to know of
Jim, this is a dialogue. The Warsaw Ghetto was where many tens of thousands of Jews were incarcerated by the Nazis in the Second World War. And they rose up. They dug tunnels. They smuggled weapons. They rose up against those who'd put them behind barbed wire.
Is it not?
And Jim Allister, do you defend everything that Israel has done? Are you seriously suggesting that all that Israel has done has defended itself? You don't think that the heavy bombardments have gone too far? You have no reservations whatsoever about what Israel has done?
No, I think there are questions to be asked about proportionality.
And how would you answer those questions yourself?
Sorry, I defend the fundamental right of Israel to defend itself.
Okay, I hear that.
In a climate where it has been subjected
I hear that, but
rocket attack, which interestingly, Mr. Nolan, you're not pursuing Mr. Galloway about, even though he supports
those rocket attacks. Have those Israeli attacks been out of proportion, Jim?
Well, I can't make that
disproportionate.
I would have some concerns about that, but I think when you're dealing with a labyrinth of tunnels for the purposes of attacks, and they are deliberately sited beside hospitals and schools, and human shields are used to protect them. And
does that mean you just bomb a school anyway? Does it?
No, it doesn't. But you have to remember that it's Hamas that has chosen to put children in that position in very many cases.
Well, where can they go, Jim?
Are these hideous things?
Because some people would argue that the kids can't get out, that Hamas are stopping them from getting out.
Sorry, Stephen, they do not have to have tunnels for the purpose of rocketing and attacking Israel. And we are back to the base point, a point which Mr. Galloway supports, Hamas bombing through rockets Israel. And if that wasn't happening, there wouldn't be an Israeli response. And as for this talk of Israelis not being welcome in Bradford, has that not got echoes of Nazism and of the attitude to people of that ilk at that time in our European history? I would have thought
it's the people who are behaving like Nazis are the people who've put 2 million people behind barbed wire, closed all the gates, and then rained down death and destruction upon them. More than
what had initiated that action?
My goodness.
What about the Hamas rockets, Jim? George Galloway, would you call on Hamas to desist from the rocket fire?
The Palestinians have the right under international law to defend themselves from illegal occupation.
So you support terrorist rocketing? It's
illegal
terrorist action.
International law affords the occupied, legally, it's a legal definition, the occupied people of Palestine the right to defend themselves. They do so ineffectually. They are very lightly and poorly armed, but they are not ready to go quietly into the museum of X nations.
But just let me ask the question one more time, George. Do you support the rockets fired by Hamas?
I think that many of these rocket attacks are ineffectual. They're untargeted, and insofar as they hurt innocent civilian people, I think that they are wrong. But the Palestinian people's right to defend themselves is an unqualified one. It's an international legal principle under the Geneva Conventions.
So that's a yes or a no. You support the rocket fire or you don't?
I support the Palestinians' right to defend themselves.
There you have it, support for terrorism, because there's no Geneva right to terrorism. And
I wouldn't go into terrorism, Jim.
Is terrorism, and we saw plenty of that in Northern Ireland, and we saw plenty of Mr. Galloway's stance in that regard as well.
Into terrorism if I were you, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much. George Galloway, Jim Allister, thank you. Lots of you reacting to this morning. 08459 555 678. The 10 o'clock news from the BBC comes next.